I'm Richard McCann, your home improvement guru. It is that time of year. What time of year? Kitten time of year. That's right. Now is the time we get all the little kitties and all the little fuzzies, but I want to talk about the ones that don't have a home and are wandering around in your neighborhood. I've been pretty fortunate over the years. I have captured and helped keep alive 5 different feral cats. Now here's how you do it. You get a live trap, put some food in it, and they will come around and climb into it. Now I guarantee they're going to be madder than a teenager that lost his cell phone, but I think you'll be okay. There are plenty of programs out there that will fix them and give them all their shots. Then you just release them back into the neighborhood. I've been pretty fortunate over the years. I made friends with 5 different feral cats that came and lived in my home for certain periods of time. So if you see a feral cat, do something about it and help reduce the population. I'm Richard McCann, and I am your home improvement guru.
Younger workers and new college grads are making new demands on potential employers, and it might benefit anyone who's looking for their next job. They are pushing salaries higher. New grads expect an average starting salary of over $66,000. That's over $8,000 more than what employers are expecting to pay. But that push by new grads could put upward pressure on all salaries. And younger workers are forcing companies to respond to their needs, or they are ready to quit. 1/3 of all new grads who have accepted an offer this spring say they expect to leave within 1 year. Just 3% said that last year, so that number has gone up by 10 times. New grads are demanding hybrid work schedules. They want to feel like they are treated fairly and that their company is socially and environmentally responsible. And the number one perk that graduating seniors want is mental health benefits. All of these demands should help all candidates in the search for their next desirable job. With your next job, I'm Stephen Greenberg.
Bill Gates recently told graduating college students not to work quite as hard as he did. I'm Jeff Colvin of Fortune magazine with the Fortune Business Update. Gates gave a commencement address to the forestry and engineering graduates of Northern Arizona University. He told them at their age he didn't believe in vacations or weekends. He had dropped out of Harvard after 2 years to start Microsoft. In the early days, his office overlooked the parking lot, and he would keep track of who was leaving early and staying late. Now he encouraged the new graduates to learn from his mistakes, telling them to take a break when they need to and take it easy on the people around them when they need it. Take more time to look back and cherish your own success, he said. Bounce back from difficulties and develop relationships. His big message, you are not a slacker if you cut yourself some slack. I'm Jeff Colvin.
Super yachts are so last year. Enter the super submarine. I'm Brian Banmiller on business. Super yachts are a prized possession of the rich and famous, something that guarantees you status, privacy, and luxury. But what if you could have all those things underwater? According to LuxuryLaunches.com, Austria-based Milagoo Submarines is planning to design, engineer, and build private yachts that will dive to 1,500 feet and cruise underwater. The most extravagant is the 928-foot-long M7. It will include 8 VIP suites, al fresco dining, and a swimming pool on the deck. But you better be ready to shell out big bucks. According to Bloomberg, the cost of this luxury sub is around $2.3 billion. The company's CEO says the M7 will be the most expensive private object in the world. It will keep passengers under the sea, surrounded by luxury that even James Bond won't be able to match. Of course, there will be other models that are less extravagant and come with a smaller price tag. But talk about a vacation with lots of privacy. Brian Banmiller, CBS News.
Are you concerned with the state of America, your state, and your community? Then you're in the right place. This is the Rutherford Magazine Show with host Mike Sparks. He and guests are here to talk local politics, history, faith, and freedom.
All right, you're on the Rutherford Magazine Show. I'm your host, Mike Sparks. I'm going to talk a little bit about faith and freedom and a guy that knows about it. I don't know if he's on hold yet or not. Jackson, GOP Chairman Austin Maxwell is going to call in. Think a lot of him. He's a former military, and strong advocate for just the Constitution, people, freedom, Faith, and his wife, Claire Maxwell, serves on our school board, and appreciate her advocacy for children and our students who seem to be going through a lot these days. And education has been a big topic, as we know. Tennessee General Assembly has funded record investment in education, $1 billion. That's $1 billion in VOTEC education, the highest in the state's history, record teacher raises and more. I know inflation offsets that with higher healthcare premiums and other costs. But I think I got Austin on the radio now. Austin, you there?
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Hey, thanks for calling in. Yeah, speaking of faith and freedom, I don't know if I've ever talked to you about your military background. Can you share a little bit about your military and some of your experience in the past?
Yeah, happy to, Mike. As we come up upon Memorial Day weekend, obviously I'll be, like a lot of people, reflecting this upcoming week and weekend with those who served and are obviously no longer with us that paid the ultimate price. But,
yes.
For me, my background, I've served over 20 years in the Tennessee Army National Guard with deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq. Afghanistan in 2005 and 2006, and Iraq in 2009 and 10. And then I retired in 2017. I had a good career, did a lot of neat stuff, fun stuff, from your usual second lieutenant jobs to being a company commander, an S3 operations officer, ran the officer candidate school for the state of Tennessee, and then ultimately was a battalion commander when I retired. In Afghanistan, I was an embedded trainer with the Afghan Army, and in Iraq, I did base security and convoy security. So
yes,
lots of neat stuff, but it was really calling just to say this time next weekend we'll be in the thick of Memorial Day, and just really would ask everybody to be thinking about
yes
those that have served our country and obviously didn't get that opportunity to be with us today over their service.
Yes. Now I noticed seeing you the other day, I think y'all presented a scholarship or something, you and Claire?
Yeah, this year in July will be the 10-year anniversary of the loss of our son, Mitchell.
Yes.
Who was a senior at Rutherford High School. And Mitchell was a great kid, but like any 18-year-old, they make dumb decisions.
Yes. Yes.
Made a dumb decision, and he didn't get to pursue his dream of,
yes,
going on to college and playing college football at Mississippi State, and eventually going into teaching or coaching. So,
yeah,
Claire and I decided to set up a Mitchell Maxwell Memorial Scholarship.
Yeah.
And we've been doing that for 10 years. We give it to a deserving senior who, is basically doing what he was doing, walking on to a collegiate program to pursue, their dream of teaching or coaching. So we've done that for 10 years now.
Now the recipient, well, what was the name of the recipient, the young lady that won it?
The young lady, as I recall, her name is Phoebe
Kale? Is that how you pronounce it?
So, yeah.
Phoebe Kale?
I think so.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, and I know I'm putting y'all on the spot, so forgive me for asking, but how did y'all kind of overcome that grief? Because I don't know if you really ever get over that, but what helped you? What helped y'all?
Well, for me, it's personally, it's time, but there's no shame in sitting down with counselors and just talking through it and talking through everything that happens. You get a whole lot of hatred in your heart. Yeah. But that's just not going to do anything to bring it back.
Exactly.
And, at the end of the day, a lot of counseling, a lot of prayer, lot of people, you know, that support you and are there with you, and they just, you know,
Yes.
get you through it.
Well, let me ask you. I know y'all are you and your wife both are strong believers. If you weren't a believer and you didn't have that faith and that hope, how would you? I know you probably can't answer that question, but how would you overcome that? That to me, that would be difficult.
That's a difficult question, you know, Mike. You know, for those that aren't a believer, you know, I know I've seen, you know, people that, you know, I lost a friend in Afghanistan, and there were some that were not believers, and you know, they struggled. They struggled with the loss of, you know, of our friends, and you know, at the end of the day, they still struggle with it to this day.
Yeah.
You know, so I think, you know, having your faith and your family and your friends, you know, that's obviously going to help you get through, you know, any of those scenarios, you know, in life.
Yeah.
But certainly is not easy, you know, if you don't have that bedrock of support.
Yeah.
You know.
You know, I think I've shared with you, you know, my friend that was killed in Iraq, Sergeant Asbury Hahn. You know, I trained him at Nissan, and he ended up losing his life. You know, my mother passed in December, and I remember he come over and bought a truck from me, and you know, and he said, "Mike, I need a truck. I've been deployed to Iraq," and I think I was 36. He was probably 30 or 31, and my mother happened to be there, and she's strong person of faith, and she said, "Can I pray with you?" And we prayed with him, and it was, I guess, 8 months later, you know, seeing where he lost his life, but they still have the truck that I sold him. Spencer stays in touch with me, his son. But one thing that was interesting, the grandmother, Freddie's mother, Spencer's grandmother, she passed last year, but she seemed like she was stronger than the husband. But one thing that was cool that she had shared with me, because the father didn't share it, but she shared it. The night before they got the knock on the door from the military that Freddie lost his life, he seen an apparition. He seen something outside, and he went in and told his wife. He said, there's something outside, just seen something, you know, some kind of an apparition. And they had lost their granddaughter over there on Rock Springs Road, over there by the schools. Used to be a little cross there. There was two young ladies that were killed, I believe, from Laverne High School. And Freddie came in to help bury, you know, for the service, and then he lost his life. So 3 weeks later, but he got that knock on the door, and I remember, you know, and then he got informed he lost his son. But I was telling the father, I said, you know, at least that's kind of comforting knowing your son was able to kind of catch a glimpse of you before he moved on. But you know, that family really had a lot of hardship. But I just appreciate y'all setting an example. There's so many other people that's dealing with some kind of grief themselves with the loss of a loved one or a parent or a child. So I applaud you for your example.
Well, you know, back to Freddie, you know, greater love hath he than the one that will lay down his life for his friends. And I think we approach that. That's every service member, when they raise their right hand, you know, they know that's a possibility.
Yes.
And so I'm sorry Freddie's not here. You know, we'll all see each other again, you know, one of these days.
You know, Haggerty, I happened to see Haggerty. We did the service when we done the groundbreaking for the new $40 million TCAT on Sergeant Asbury Hahn Way. And I didn't really know Haggerty. He wasn't a senator at that time. And Holmes was there, Jeff Holmes, General Holmes. I know you know General Holmes. And I had the widow there, Angie and Spencer, and, you know, Governor Haslam recognized him and recognized, you know, his loss, and Raymond Mitchell. He was just a young 21-year-old shot by a sniper for just handing a kid a bottle of water in Iraq. And that night I seen Haggerty, and I didn't even know Haggerty. And it was around Christmas celebration, and the governor was literally like 8 feet away, 10 feet away by the Christmas tree, and Haggerty come up to me. He said, "Man, I just want to tell you, that was the most touching thing I've ever seen." And it really, that him taking the time out to come talk to me about Freddie Hahn And now he's a senator. That always meant that meant a great deal to me. And Jeff Holmes, he shared some things, and you know some of the things that these folks have went through, and losing limbs and being burnt, and that are difficult. I don't, post-traumatic stress is real, and counseling is real. So I know a lot of folks scoff at counselors, scoff at social workers, scoff at these things, but we're seeing a mental health crisis like we're seeing that we've never seen. It's unprecedented today. So counseling is important.
Counseling is important. I've had counseling for my PTSD, and it helps me. And there's no shame. You're, a 16-year-old kid in school.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't want to be in school today, Mike. I mean,
school
is not easy. It's just not by any, stretch of the imagination.
Yes.
So there's no shame in that. There's just no shame at all, seeking to speak to somebody. Hey, on another note, you mind if I shift gears with you real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just really, I'll put on two hats.
Okay.
So one hat is as the, local chairman of the GOP. We just, had our reorganization, and, we've got a great mix of a lot of the old group from the past 2 years back on the executive committee here locally, but also have some new blood on the committee. Sean Wright, Murfreesboro City Councilman, he's going to be a director at large. Frances Rosales, who is on the Rutherford County School Board, she is our first Latino member on the county executive committee.
I applaud you for that.
I think that's wonderful, because as a national party, as a regional or state party, even a local party, you got to speak out and appeal to people from all walks of life, or you'll no longer be relevant.
Exactly. Well, that's one thing I appreciate about you, because sometimes I feel like there's people that are, I don't know if you say old school, closed-minded or what, but I applaud you for just being open-minded to and respect everybody, no matter who they are, Yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, I think we all want the same thing. We want great places
Amen.
to live. We want great schools. We want, good government. We all want the same thing.
Yes.
And it's just a matter of, how you get there with good people in government.
Yes.
Like yourself and, Tim Rudd and Charlie Baum and, Brian Terry and Robert Stevens. We've got a great delegation.
And sometimes we don't.
Got Don.
Yeah. Sometimes we don't always agree.
Yeah, that's the thing about it, is you're never going to agree. I haven't cornered the market on republicanism or conservatism. You're never going to agree on everything.
Yes.
But you can agree on just about most everything.
Yeah. Well, if folks are listening and want to get involved with the GOP somehow, some form or fashion, or just know more, what would be the best way to contact you?
Yeah, they can email me directly, austinmaxwell2009@gmail.com, or director@rutherfordgop.org.
Okay.
We meet on the fourth Monday of each month. And, as we go into the big cycle coming up next year, we want to keep this county red, running to the right, and heading in the right direction. So we want people to get involved.
Yep. California's infiltrating.
Yeah, that's right.
They really are.
Don't California my county. Don't California my Tennessee.
Exactly.
If you left California and you know why you left California, then welcome to Tennessee.
Amen.
Don't California.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you, Austin. We got to take a quick break. Tell Claire hello, okay?
Absolutely. Good talking to you, Mike.
Too.
Be safe.
Keep up good work, brother. We'll see you. Let's take a quick
See you.
break.
Most people know that their insurance can provide them with coverage for the many life's mishaps, but I can help you also unlock discounts, save money, and get benefits with Farmers Insurance policy perks. Whether we're discussing home or auto insurance, I am here to help you understand these great perks. Call me, Mark Lewis, at 615-625-7070 for a quote, and you can get a whole lot of something with Farmers policy perks.
We are Farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Not available in every state. Only available select Farmers branded policies underwritten by Farmers Truck or Fire Insurance Exchanges or affiliate.
Dr. Automotive Auto Repair and Maintenance Mechanic Shop Garage provides car owners in Smyrna, Murfreesboro, Laverne, and the Middle Tennessee area with excellent auto repair services. Deep-rooted experience in serving both foreign and domestic automobiles allows for proper diagnosis in a timely manner. Check them out online at autorepairsmyrna.com, call them at 615-220-0971, or stop on in at 1205 Hazelwood Drive in Smyrna.
Hey Rutherford County, it's Mark from the Safe House. And now the security riddle of the day. What do big box, fake safes, face masks, and Joe Biden have in common? They don't work, and they promise things that isn't true. So don't get a Joe Biden level of security. Come down to the Safe House and see what a real safe looks like. Unlike most of the other safe dealers in the area, we have safes in stock ready for delivery. And at the Safe House, gun safes are sales tax free. That's right, sales tax free. So drop by the store or go to NashvilleSafehouse.com. That's NashvilleSafehouse.com.
My wife and I enjoy going by Yard Sale Inc. We usually go to both locations, the one in Smyrna as well as the one in Murfreesboro. A lot of times on Saturday mornings we stop by, and their inventory changes weekly, so you never know what you're going to see, and it's mostly open box. The name fits it. It's exactly that. It's a yard sale. If you don't totally agree with the price, the staff is always friendly and nice and willing to work with you.
That's the Yard Sale store in Smyrna at 111 Enon Springs Road West, in Murfreesboro at 204 South Front Street, and online at bestdealintown.com.
Hi, this is Allie Dowenhauer with Isaiah 117 House. Isaiah 117 House provides physical and emotional support for children awaiting foster care placement here in Rutherford County. We are changing the way foster care begins, and those kiddos are brought to our house to hang out and wait for a foster family, and they're given everything they need. We support foster children, DCS, and foster families here in Rutherford County. Visit us at www.isaiah117house.com or visit our Facebook page, Isaiah 117 House, Rutherford County.
Hey, we're back. Rutherford Magazine Show. I'm your host, Mike Sparks. Got a special guest I'm fixing to introduce. I often talk about the power of prayer. And I remember when I was about 28, 29, man, I was working at Nissan, hating it, Jackson. I was just hating it, man. I was praying every day, Lord Jesus, lead me out of this place. Man, I was singing hymns, didn't know the words of the hymns, and I was just miserable. Nissan was good to me, but it just was not my cup of tea. And this guy I'm fixing to introduce used to do a radio show on 99.7 and called Career Link, and it was about careers and jobs and finding your passion. And I'd sit outside and listen on Sunday night. I guess it may have been the same time slot I'm on right now, and on this station. And I was going to Christ Church, big Christ Church up there, Old Hickory Boulevard, and they had I was at a Christ Church, and they had a Taekwondo class we were in, and met this gentleman, and he introduced himself. He introduced himself to me. He says, "My name is Dan Miller." I said, "Oh, you Dan Miller on the radio?" And he looked at me like, "You listen?" I said, "Yes, sir, I listen to you every night." So I've got my buddy, a mentor, and career coach, Dan Miller, with 48 Days to the Work You Love. How you doing, Dan?
Hey, I'm doing excellent, Mike. Great to talk to you.
Yeah, I know I gave you, like a month notice for coming on the show, didn't I?
Yeah, I like those long notices.
Yeah.
No problem.
I'll call people and I'll be like, "Hey, can you join me on the show?" They're like, "When?" I'm like, "In 2 hours." And they're like, "Man, I need a better notice than that." How's Joanne doing?
She's doing wonderful.
Now, what part of Florida are you in?
We're in Osprey, which is on the Gulf side. It's down pretty far, so we're in between Sarasota and Fort Myers. But just a little tiny town, doesn't even have a stoplight, but it has a post office. So we're just loving life down here.
Are you close to the beach?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we're closest I want to be. I'm not a fan of sand, but we can be there in about 5 minutes.
Yes. Now,
I'm sitting out here in the back on our back lanai, and of course we got a pool here, so we got lots of sun and water, so we don't need to go anywhere else, and that suits me fine.
Yes. I know one of the times I talked to you, I guess it was last year or two, and you may not want to get into that, but the excessive regulation, that may be a whole nother topic. But because you were a little upset. You were kind of fired up when I talked to you, and then you had told me what you sold your property for, and I was like, but Dan, didn't you just sell your property for this amount? And I was like, man, count yourself blessed, all the headaches and stuff. But I know that's probably a whole nother show. But don't you get a little turned off from government sometimes?
Well, yeah, that was a nightmare. That was in Williamson County. We lived in Franklin for 30 years, and had a little deal come up on one of our properties that I thought was unreasonable. It took 4 years, 9 months, and 3 days to unravel it. But the funny thing is, as you're kind of alluding to, in that period of time, the value of that property went up exponentially.
Yes.
So had I been able to sell and move when I wanted to, it would have we would have gotten a whole lot less money for it. So there was a kind of a back end blessing to that.
Yeah.
But it was not a fun experience to go through.
Yes.
And a lot of people told me, just forget it. It'll never happen. You'll never get it resolved.
Yeah.
But I was patient, and I was kind to the people involved, the attorneys, the bureaucrats, and I just kept saying, hey, I'm your friend. I'm not your enemy. Let's work this out. And ultimately, we got it resolved, and I'm grateful for that.
Yes. Well, hopefully nothing like that's going to happen in Rutherford County. But, I remember you just being so fired up over that. But now you spent, how many years were you at Christ Church when I met you? That was back, we're at 96 or 97, 98?
Yeah, we were there for 12 years, got there in 1989, so that would have covered that time period. Yep.
Yeah. You remember when I met you? Because we were changing gear into a gi, and I said, you introduced yourself, and you said, I'm Dan Miller, and I was like, oh, you're on the radio, and you looked shocked, like, oh, somebody's listening to my show, Now, how long did y'all do that show?
I was on radio for 6 years. So here's how that went, and I've been really fortunate to just have a growing audience, but started a Sunday school class. The Sunday school class grew way beyond my expectations, and we finally moved it from a Sunday school class to being up on a hill there at Christ Church in the Thompson building.
Yes.
And we met on Monday nights, so we'd have 2 hours uninterrupted, not trying to squeeze it in between sermons. Did that for 8 years, and then got on the radio. Was on WTN for 6 years. Then I discovered this thing called podcasting, made a move in 2006 to podcasting, and that has exponentially increased my reach. Every stage of what I just described gave about a 10 times multiple to what I was doing.
Wow. Yes. Yeah, that's why I remember meeting you. Do you remember what you told me? I was about 28 years old, I guess. 28, 29.
No, I don't.
You don't remember? Because I was going, and I was selling cars on the internet. Back then, people really didn't have computers, and man, I was just miserable at Nissan. I mean, just on that assembly line, and just I was trying to go to college at night. At night, it was just difficult. It just wouldn't fit. Having to be tied to that assembly line, and I told you a few things I had done. I sold that Jaguar, and laid hands on it, prayed over it, sold it 19 days. Made more on that car.
Puerto Rico.
Yep, had that Porsche go to Puerto Rico, and done some of that. That guy Marco Ramallo, he flew in, and we hung out a little bit. And he said, "Man, I got a place in he was in not Puerto. What's the other? Costa Rica. He was in Costa Rica." And
was it really?
Yeah, he says, "I've got another place, Hacienda, whatever it's called." And he says, "Come down and see me sometime." And we shipped that car down there, and I was doing some of that stuff, had some Jeeps go to, I think, the Czech Republic, the truck go to Estonia, and just different things like that. Just I hate to say hustling live on the radio, but I mean, it's just, I always loved cars. My dad was a car guy, but you told me, because I was trying to find myself, just kind of miserable, man. And I know there's listeners out there that been in my shoes. or maybe right now, and you told me, you said, man, you need to quit Nissan. You need to go after your passion, leave Nissan. And you were the first one to tell me that. And that was scary. Because I had two kids at home.
But when you look at the fact that you could sell a car and make half as much as you were making in the entire month working at Nissan, to me the math is pretty easy to see.
Yes.
If you devoted your time to that, made 2 sales in a month, and replicated your income, that's a pretty sweet transition.
Yeah.
And of course, I know that a lot of people are telling you, you're nuts. You're gonna get a vested retirement coming and all that. And I'm like, man, life is too short.
I know.
Follow your passion. Do what you want to do.
Yeah.
The money will show up in unexpected ways, and you really proved that to be true.
Well, it was, it's tough. I mean, the car business it's a tough, the overhead is what would just eat you alive. And then speaking of government, the Cash for Clunkers program come out, and one thing I like about Bob Corker, he called it a government scheme. And all it is simple economics and supply and demand. You go crush good cars, take them off the road, then it's a union bailout, and then all of a sudden car prices start going up. And I remember it just seemed like everybody the auction fees are going up, everybody's going up, my accountant's going up, Auto Trader, Cars.com, everybody I'm paying is raising their prices, and I'm trying to squeeze a nickel and squeeze it, and I'm thinking, what am I doing this for? I mean, I'm just killing myself because it was 60 hours a week, and then being on the county commission was difficult. But, my sister, you've probably heard me say my sister Vicky's in a nursing home. Sadly, she lost everything. But I remembered that red Jag. I wanted that car, and I went to the bank and borrowed $18,000. That was a lot of money for me. That'd be equivalent to probably $50,000 a day, and it scared me.
Yeah.
I didn't want to make the first payment at the bank, and I remember a guy was kind of poking at me. He was like, we can't sell that car. How are you going to sell it? But here's what was cool about that, Dan. That adversity, that taunting, because he was kind of taunting. We hung out together. This guy was one of them wrestlers, and that taunting really was cool because it motivated me. Because I was like, I'm going to prove this dude wrong. And I kept thinking if they can't, because it belonged to the dealer had it for a year, and he was the best dealer in Middle Tennessee. I mean, this guy was just good at cars. He's still in the car business. I mean, knew more about the car business than I did. And I kept thinking, what's he not doing right? And he just wasn't marketing that car. Back then, many people had computers. My brother-in-law just bought a computer. And then I had bought one, and that executive out of Massachusetts bought it. But my sister rode with me, then we got the rental car back. She'd often help me with some deals. We went to Wyoming and speculated on a vintage item up there. 4-day trip, but I give God the glory for it. It was well worth it. But I know you're an entrepreneur, and you've done a few things. I remember that BMW you bought from me, and the back door. You remember the back door? Was it the left rear door on a BMW 700 series? The door wouldn't open. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
And you fixed it.
I do. Absolutely.
How'd you fix that car? Because I don't even know how to do it. How would you get the door open?
I don't remember the details, but hey, I'm an old farm kid. If something doesn't work, you figure it out.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember another BMW I had, and the passenger's window was broken out of it. And hey, I just got one out of a junkyard, took the door panels off, and put it in.
You mean you went to a junkyard? You walked onto a junkyard?
Walked in a junkyard. I loved going to junkyards.
Yeah, me too.
I still do. The first car I ever had was a 1931 Ford Model A Roadster, and I chopped and channeled it.
Did you really?
I built it just. It's like the old Johnny Cash song, one piece at a time.
Yep.
Man, when I had $5, I'd go to the junkyard,
get
a
you.
generator. I'd go and get a master cylinder for the brakes. I built it.
Yeah.
Because as a farm kid, I didn't have any money. My dad wasn't going to buy me a car. I pieced it together. I had it in an old chicken coop for a year and a half before I ever pulled it out.
Good for you.
I got headlights from J.C. Penney out of Chicago.
Yeah.
Had a Packard transmission behind a Chrysler 331 Hemi engine, then an Olds rear end that I welded solid, so I had solid positive traction all the time. I spent days in the junkyard scouring
Good
for
for you.
pieces to put together that car.
But how
Yes,
many
indeed.
people? How many people do you think, or even? I mean, I had a guy that I on Facebook. He had Adam Burlett, I think his name is, and that's how I met him. He was at the junkyard trying to pull a Express Auto Salvage in Laverne. Tim Tomlin that founded it was a friend of mine. He's now deceased, but he was trying to pull a subframe out of a truck or something. I went over and was just helping him kind of pull it out. But you know, not many people, I would dare say, know that. But it reminds me of that quote: "Necessity is the mother of all invention." You know it?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, what'd you do with that old car? Did you make money on the car?
I did. I still have a little leather notebook where I kept track of every penny I spent on that car. Had it till after. That's the car that I had when I met Joanne, my wife, and we had that car and kept it for several years after we got married. We were both going to Ohio State at the time, and it finally came a time where I thought, man, I can turn that thing into money. And so I sold it. You know, it was a great season, and of course I learned a ton about cars in building it.
Yeah.
But then we sold it and moved into having a family instead of just having a little hot rod. Man, that thing I had open exhaust on it, and I had Farmall tractor mufflers that I just shoved in the open exhaust.
Really?
And when I want to race somebody, I just pull them out, and it was open exhaust.
Really?
But they stopped about under where the seat ended
Wow.
as well. And Joanna would go home every night smelling like exhaust.
Yeah.
And she thought, who is this guy that I'm hanging out with?
Really?
But it prompted her to learn about cars. She bought the little model cars. She thought, if I'm going to marry Dan, I need to know about cars.
That's good.
She didn't have a father, had no brothers.
Oh, wow.
Didn't have her driver's license. So
Yeah.
she learned about cars and learned to enjoy them because I was so passionate about them.
Well, you know.
Still am, man. What'd I buy? 11 cars from you?
Yeah, you bought 11 cars. So I got another one you may want to buy. I talked to you about the other day. My wife wants to keep it, and I don't know. It's a Mercedes SL 500. They just scare me. It just scares me just to start the car because I'm like, man, if something breaks down, it's going to be expensive. And you know, Danny Brewer at Dr. Automotive probably doesn't want to work on it, you know. And it's like Larry Vincent over at Ship Shape Marine. Every time I'd buy a boat when I had my car business, he'd get on to me for buying a boat. Even though he was a boat mechanic, he'd like would get on to me for buying boats or jet skis, you know. But speaking of the junkyard, you know, you've got an Assemblies of God, I guess, Pentecostal background, correct?
Oh, I've been everything.
Yeah.
Man, I started out Amish and Mennonite. I've been Baptist, Presbyterian, Methodist, Assembly of God, you name it. We've experienced it. I've had a very, very fun ecumenical journey.
Well, the reason I ask is I'm kind of going a different direction, so that hold on to got to deal with my ADHD here. But when I was at the junkyard when I first got elected to the state, and I was in a suit. I know this sounds comical. I at least took my tie off, and I was looking for a fuel pump for a Lincoln Town Car. I happened to have a Lincoln Town Car at the car business. And I think that belonged to Congressman Mark Green's chief of staff that I took on a trade, Steve Albrooks, if I'm not mistaken. And them fuel pumps, they're expensive. I mean, and I don't want to go pay $300-something at the Ford dealership. And I just thought, well, I'll go out there to the junkyard. I'll just see what they got. And, you know, paid my $2 up there. And I'm walking out there. They had, and I'm thinking, am I crazy? I kind of start doubting myself. You've probably been there where you're like, man, what am I doing out here? You know, and I'm thinking, who shows up in a suit at the junkyard? And I'm thinking, what kind of a legislator am I? Am I crazy? And I'm walking out there and I'm just feeling down because the fuel pump's underneath the fuel tank. You got to drop the tank, you know, to get to it. I had no tools. And I'm walking out there, and the only Lincoln they had, guess what was sitting on the front seat?
Fuel pump.
Fuel pump, yeah. Fuel pump was sitting there. And I was like, oh my gosh. And somebody had cut something, like it was technically broke, but I thought, well, I could take the pump off of it, and I could put it back on the housing and get it to work. Because, you know, when I worked at Nissan, I remember putting fuel pumps in the Sentras. And I thought, I'd get this thing to work. And I come walking out of there. I was kind of excited, and a guy was standing there. He had a big old beard on, and the man tells me, I guess he's about 65, 70, and I want to say his last name's Gilmore. He's into hot rods. And the guy says, "You keeping them straight in Nashville?" And I said, "Well, sir, I'm trying." And he goes, "You always speaking up for people and the working man. That's what I appreciate about you." And I didn't even know this guy. And that's what I call confirmation. I was like, yes, that's why I'm at this junkyard, getting $7 for a fuel pump that would have cost $300-something retail, and got the car running. I've seen that gentleman around a little bit. But, you know, you and I have talked about synchronicities, spiritual moments, God wink moments.
Absolutely.
And they happen at junkyards, you know?
Absolutely. Boy, it can happen anywhere. You just expect it, and those things show up.
Well, you know, I was at Brother Hardwick that you knew real well. You know about his I was over at his house, his widow's house, helping my friend Brenda Bryant. You know, she's with Life of Victory Ministries in Laverne. You know, her church burnt down about 7 or 8 years ago. It was one of the little churches that Christ Church kind of helped with. It was on Walter Road in Laverne, and she's now at another location up near I guess it's called Mason Street in Laverne, across near Bridgestone over there. And she needed help getting these chairs that Hardwick's widow was going to give her. And so I drove her up there with my wife's SUV, and we loaded up the chairs and got them to fit. And I was telling Brenda the story. Have you seen, there's a video out there, I think on YouTube, about Brother Hardwick, where he was about 18 or 17. He was praying for direction. You know, what does he need to do? You know, and you being a career coach, you could kind of see this. And he said he said a prayer, and he said it wasn't rainy. And he said, "Lord, if you want me to go into ministry, let's start raining." And he just thought, crazy question. He said, it started sprinkling. He said, "Well, this is crazy." So then he was like, "Well, Lord, if it's really you, let it quit raining." Kind of like Gideon, you know, with the fleece, and it quit raining. Yeah. Do you know about that video? Have you seen it?
No.
Yeah, it's out there. You'd have to search on YouTube. But I know that church, didn't it start off with what? I mean, it grew to, how many people are out there at Christ Church now?
Well, he started it at 18 years old, Brother L.H. Hardwick did, with about 25 people, just meeting in the basement of a house.
Yeah.
And it grew to over 7,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was an amazing story. He was an amazing man. We, last year flew back up for his funeral.
Yeah.
Under his leadership, I started everything that I'm doing today with 48 Days to the Work You Love. Started in that church and grew into what it is today. And it was under his leadership, so I'm forever grateful to him. He was an amazing man.
Yes. Now, you weren't at the Dave Ramsey's office when I presented Hardwick that proclamation about 2 years ago, were you? I don't think y'all were there.
No.
Brenda had.
No, I wasn't.
Pastor Brian asked me. There was several folks that knew him for years that were there. It was I guess at Ramsey's the building, and it's to the left. There's like a big meeting facility right there, and we were there. But yeah, he was a real blessing. I remember him, and I hope Bart Walker to get on to me for saying this live on the radio. But I always remember I was about 26. No, I was about 22, 23, 24, somewhere there. And I remember specifically in a sermon, he says, women are a lot like ovens. And he said, men are a lot like microwaves. And I was talking about, how we're built. And, and was you there? You remember him saying that? It got my attention. I was like, whoa, this guy's, it just stood out so much for me. Now, is that how you and Dave Ramsey became friends, was Christ Church?
We did. We met at Christ Church. We were both young and had both made some poor decisions in business. We were crying, licking our wounds together, and spent a lot of time together trying to figure out what we were going to do.
So y'all about early 40s?
Mapped out. Yeah, early 40s.
Because I was in Dave's Sunday school class. Well, not his Sunday school class. I remember being in the Sunday school class and him coming in with the scissors, cutting up the credit cards. That's when they were doing. Is it Hal, Roy Matlock, and then Hal? what was the guy's name that since passed that started the Money Game show?
Well, it was Roy Matlock and Dave Ramsey on the Money Game. I don't remember a third.
There was another one because he was real involved with Nashville Real Estate Club or Nashville Real Estate. Nice fella.
I remember who you're talking about. I can't bring his name to mind.
Super nice guy. He's since passed. Well, what advice would you give? Like I've got Jackson here in front of me. He's in college and trying to find himself. And sadly, his mom passed away. Last February was last year. And
sorry.
Young guy at 22, he loses his mom. But when are you going to graduate, Jackson? Next year? Yeah, next year. And with media, what? And then we've got Jeremy Smithson. Jeremy couldn't make it. He's I think he's listening. He's up in the mountains. He was telling me hiking. Just called me earlier. But what do you tell these young guys right here how to find their calling?
Well, if we just look at what's happening in the workplace, we can be misdirected. The first thing to do is look inward. 85% of the process of having a confidence of right direction in your career comes from looking inward first. How has God uniquely gifted you? What are the skills and abilities you have, things you really enjoy? What are your personality traits? How do you relate to other people? What kind of environments you're most comfortable in? And then what I call, what are your values, dreams, and passions? What are those things that you recognize when you're doing it? You're in the zone. We talk about athletes being in the zone. You just recognize, wow, this is when I really come alive. Now, there's no right or wrong, good or bad about any of that, but if you look inward, 85%, you ought to be able to identify some real clear markers, and from that, create a clear focus and say, all right, this is what I need to make me thrive in a working environment. Now, where can I find or create that? Now, there's so many opportunities today. You can find pretty much anything you want, but it's also never been easier to just start something. If you can't find a job that you like, just start something where you're able to do that. So
yes.
I'm just I've never been more excited about the opportunities for young kids coming into the workplace. Wow.
You don't.
Explosive.
I'm worried to death about them, to be honest with you, Dan. It's like, I really am. I hate to sound like a pessimist. It just seems like, I don't know how many young people are going to junkyards and putting their cars together. I doubt it. Many, but it's almost, and I've talked to Dr. Ming Wang about this a few years ago, and he spoke at Rotary, that, the Chinese culture, they were really, really poor. They've had to work hard. Now they've accumulated wealth, and then they're going to spoil their kids. And I was like, do you see a cycle where then all of a sudden some of those are going to lose a lot of that wealth, and then you're going to see hardships. And he was saying, yes, it would come back around. But those hardships that you endured and others endured, like my former guest, Austin Maxwell. Some of the things he's seen and. It really builds you and helps build your character. But what worries me, if young people don't go through the trials and tribulations that others have, I think it's not beneficial. They don't know how to deal with it.
Hey, Mike, I have 16 grandkids. I'm
Wow.
really interested in this, but I am excited beyond description about the things they're exposed to, how they're able to learn, how they're able to experiment, and the things they're already doing to chart the path they're going to be on.
Yes.
None of them are going to feel captive to have to get a job, have to get somebody to give them a paycheck if they want to do that. My oldest grandson moved down here where we live, and he's working at Sarasota Memorial Hospital. He loves what he's doing. I'm thrilled to see him thriving in what he's doing. He feels like he's able to serve people well.
Yes.
And loves what he's doing. He works 3 12-hour shifts,
Wow.
3 days a week, 12 hours, has 4 days a week off. I mean, what a cool setup for a 28-year-old.
Oh yeah,
doing that.
If you've got the energy. Well, let me ask you about the. Well, go ahead, Dan.
Paid well. I just helped him buy a little Mini Cooper that he's pretty proud of. But man, it's a pretty good setup, and he's got a traditional job because it fits him well.
Yes.
So that's the key. What is it that fits you, that makes you come alive?
Well, you look, if you studied, I know you've studied the Briggs-Meyer, some call it the Myers-Briggs personality type indicator. I didn't realize, I'm looking at it now, I didn't realize that Carl, the late Dr. Carl Jung, was involved with some of that. If you've studied Jung, he often emphasizes synchronicity and strange connections that almost had meaning, which as Christians we would call God wink moments or confirmation. But how accurate do you think the Myers-Briggs personality profile is?
It's a very useful tool. Now, we use the DISC, we use Strength Finders, Fascination Index, the Enneagram. I mean, all of those, I think, are useful tools to just give you more indication. And you ought to see clear patterns in those. We are very predictable. And if you understand those things about yourself, that's a real help. And then finding environments that embrace that. If you're shy and introverted, you don't have to remake yourself. Find environments where you're able to do that. If you enjoy ideas more than being around people, nothing wrong with that. Find environments where you can thrive in that environment. So, yeah, we use the Myers-Briggs. I mean, I know what I am, and it's been the same for many, many years. Yeah, I encourage people to do that. Not to make it more real than you, the person. Ultimately, you're the judge. But if you say, oh, my gosh, yeah, that's right, then it helps you make better decisions.
Yes. Well, Dan, can you hold just for a quick commercial break, and we'll play that segue music. You were serious about that song, weren't you?
Sure.
Okay, we'll play that song that you suggested, segue. We'll hold on just for a quick break. Thank you, Dan.
Most people know that their insurance can provide them with coverage for the many life's mishaps. But I can help you also unlock discounts, save money, and get benefits with Farmers Insurance policy perks. Whether we're discussing home or auto insurance, I am here to help you understand these great perks. Call me, Mark Lewis, at 615-625-7070 for a quote, and you can get a whole lot of something with Farmers policy perks.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Not available in every state. Only available at select Farmers branded policies underwritten by Farmers Truck or Fire Insurance Exchanges or affiliate.
Dr. Automotive Auto Repair and Maintenance Mechanic Shop Garage provides car owners in Smyrna, Murfreesboro, Laverne, and the Middle Tennessee area with excellent auto repair services. Deep-rooted experience in serving both foreign and domestic automobiles allows for proper diagnosis in a timely manner. Check them out online at autorepairsmyrna.com, call them at 615-220-0971, or stop on in at 1205 Hazelwood Drive in Smyrna.
Hey, Rutherford County, it's Mark from the Safe House. And now the security riddle of the day. What do big box, fake safes, face masks, and Joe Biden have in common? They don't work, and they promise things that isn't true. So don't get a Joe Biden level of security. Come down to the Safe House and see what a real safe looks like. Unlike most of the other safe dealers in the area, we have safes in stock, ready for delivery. And at the Safe House, gun safes are sales tax free. That's right, sales tax free. So drop by the store or go to NashvilleSafehouse.com. That's NashvilleSafehouse.com.
And shove it. I ain't working here no more. A woman done left and took all the reason.
All right, we're back. Rutherford Magazine Show, host Mike Sparks. Talking about taking this job and shove it. That was my friend and mentor Dan Miller's recommendation. 48days.com. Dan? You like that song?
Absolutely. It really lays out the feeling that a whole lot of people still have today, all these years after Johnny Paycheck made it famous.
Yes.
Take this job and shove it.
You ever seen anybody?
A lot of people feel like that.
Well, you ever seen anybody say that and then they don't have the other job lined up and they got to come back for the job back?
Oh, wow. I don't know that I've got an example of that, but I think a whole lot of people have used that line on their way out.
Yeah. Well, I had I remember when I left Whirlpool, I was going to go to work for Coca-Cola. I was 24, and I gave them a notice, and that was about the time the Kuwait war and all that had started up, and I gave my notice, and I called Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola, the guy was like, well, let me have somebody call you, and I thought, well, this doesn't sound good. Here I was 24 years old, and they called back, and they said, something's changed, and we've had to put all hiring. They had a corporate announcement. All hiring was on freeze, and I had to go to my supervisor. And luckily, I didn't pull one of those. And I was like, "Hey, man, they're not going to be able to hire me. There's a freeze on hiring." They're telling me. He said, "Well, don't worry about your job. You you got a job here. And I think about 6 months later, but it worked out good because I got my 5 years in, and then, Coca-Cola called me. But they did shaft me out of a paycheck. I had a supervisor supposed to take my place, and they didn't like take your place because they had to work. And I remember I worked 18 months out of vacation, but the irony, the Coca-Cola lobbyist was in my office from North Carolina, from Charlotte, and I brought it up to him. I was like, hey, man, y'all still owe me a paycheck from 20-something years ago. And my wife's like, you need to let it go. Just let it go. I'm like, still, it's the principle. And I started thinking, how would I factor interest and all that kind of stuff on there? But, yeah, I would always give a notice, man, if you can. But going back on the personality profile, do you think that, say, Jackson at 22, is he still going to be similar when he's 42 or 52 on his likes and dislikes and some of this? I mean, because you've got a psychology background. What's your thoughts on that?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, again, with my grandkids, I mean, by the time they're 4 years old, we can see clear personality traits developing that are going to guide them the rest of their lives. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't change. There are a lot of things, we can change in application, how we use those gifts and all that. But those things are going to stay pretty much the same forever.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've taken those over, 50-year period, and it's still the same thing.
What is yours?
Well, in the Myers-Briggs, it's an INTJ. Introverted thinking, Enneagram. I'm a 5. I'm a head guy, not a heart guy. I'm much better with ideas and getting things done than I am with people and relationships.
Yeah.
That's been invaluable for me to understand that over the years, because I have my schedule now so that on Monday and Tuesday, I have all my meetings on Monday, staff people, vendors, whoever we need to meet with. Tuesday are all my coaching things. I meet with my mastermind on Tuesday. And then Wednesday morning, I do my podcast. Wednesday afternoon, I do interviews. That's the only time I'm available for interviews. And then Thursday and Friday, I have no appointments, no schedule. That's when I do what I call deep work. That's when I work on manuscripts, but I don't have meetings. So I really schedule a lot of my week where I'm just by myself, because I know I work well that way.
Yeah.
I don't want to have committee meetings. I don't want to have staff interrupting me. Nope. I want to just be isolated and working on my own.
I know mine comes in, it's called Champion. Another one's called Campaigner, that ENFP. And I've taken it like 10 times, and I keep coming in the same. But if folks want more information, just Google Myers-Briggs. Well, Dan, we're out of time. Tell Joanne I said hello, and consider buying that SL500 from me, okay?
Hey, send me the details.
I will. I'll get it to you, brother. God bless you for all the difference you've made in countless lives, including my own. God bless you. Take care. We'll see y'all next week.